In this video, we're going to focus on fine-tuning our model a little bit. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding some details that I feel are going to be helpful in developing the elevations a little bit better, also cleaning up things such that we haven't modeled yet, such as the window wells, some of the gutters, some of the trim work, etc. Now we have to be careful in terms of how and why we're doing this. Oftentimes you're limited by either budget or by a time constraint. So you have to be judicious in deciding what you really need to model. As an example, a lot of this can be taken care of as we develop the plans better with two-dimensional drafting solutions rather than 3D modeling. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to show you how in some cases you may want to do 3D modeling, fine-tuning, and additional detailing using extrusions, etc., or bringing in blocks or 3D models from certain websites that might help you out. You can also bring in certain CAD details and so on from certain websites. You also have to be aware of how much detail you really need to show in one of these models. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take a look at each one of my constructs and see what I want to be able to develop a little bit more. So what we can see here is we have our view drawing of our model, and each one of these levels is a separate construct. So I have my site. If I was able to click down in here, you're going to see that I also have my basement. Now that one's not going to be affected too much. But as an example right here, if we take a look at this roof, we could add a fascia board and maybe some gutters located into there. And also, if we want to do is draw some downspouts. Now one of the reasons we may want to do this on here is because through some simple extrusions, we would be able to then modify all three or all four elevations that we need to develop. The same thing with maybe some trim work at the top of the chimney, including maybe a chimney cap that we can download from a website, a manufacturer that may be producing those. So we would probably do the same thing on the lower level in terms of the gutters and trim work and fascia. There are certain things that we can do with the building trim. This particular elevation is going to have wood siding, so the wood siding usually at corners has wood trim that goes around it. I'm not going to do that on this. I'm going to handle that as a 2D elevation. So once we develop our elevations, which we've already shown in the previous video on how to do that, then we're going to be adding hatching and line work to modify that. Now that's all based on the fact that we may be limited in terms of what we need to do to model. Now when it comes time to do a 3D rendering, we may want to go ahead and add those to it above and beyond what we already have for the 2D modeling or the 2D CAD work that we're going to be doing for our deliverables, which are our sheets. Something else we want to show in here is probably, at least in plan view, is bring in some 2D details for our window wells that we have in here. Let's zoom out a little bit. I might make some modifications here to the road, so in case we change where we want to do our perspective, we're going to be able to have a little bit more options at realistically how it is. Let me go ahead and 3D orbit around. Okay. As I had mentioned in one of my previous videos, we may do a combination of 2D and 3D work for the pool and the pool deck area. Again, keeping in mind that we may not have it in the budget to have to model this in the back, since we may not be doing a rendering of the back. So that's something that you'll want to coordinate with the project architect or with your team captain or project captain, who may have a little bit more insight on how the job was contracted. Something else that we may or may not do at this point is going to be trim work around the windows. Again, I'm going to show you two ways to do it. Initially, I'm going to show you as 2D line work, and then I'm going to show you how to do it as 3D modeling using extrusions. etc. So let's see what else we can do in this. Let's go ahead and go to the basement. And what we're going to do in here in fine-tuning this model is we're going to be adding our window wells to here. Let's look at our main level and see some of the things that we may be modifying in here. If we take a look at this in 3D, we may want to do a couple things with this wall. We can probably extend it up so that it closes up. Right now there's a gap in here. Now from our rendering perspective and our view in terms of doing the perspective, we probably would never see that. And we won't see it in any of the elevations or in any of our plans. So that I'm just going to do quickly, again, because it gives us a little better idea on how we need to do the construction to be able to cover up gaps like that. Let's go back to the top view on this one. I think that's pretty good on what we need to do. Let's go ahead and go to the upper. I already mentioned some of the things that we need to do with the fascia board and potential gutters for that. If we again go to 3D modeling, this is where we would be doing the 3D modeling for the trim work and anything we would add up in here for our chimney cap that we might do. Now a lot of this we're going to want to do in 2D line work, but we're going to definitely need to give unique layers to them so that we do not run into the problem of when we go to present it in plan view on our sheets that we will be seeing three-dimensional excess lines in a number of places. So let's go ahead and go to the site. And I had mentioned already about the pool. We're going to actually do the pool deck area as a 3D model so that we don't get into a conflict and some unwanted lines at this point. But the pool itself, unless we get paid to do a 3D model of the rear of the house or interiors that are looking out, we're just going to go ahead and do the pool itself as line work. Also here we have to make a decision on the window wells that we will be drawing or bringing into the basement level, because that's where they're going to occur. How they're going to be represented here on the site. And I'll show you a couple of ways how we could do that, and then we can sort of make a decision on which one is going to be the best to use. So I think that covers it pretty well. And let's go ahead and let's begin with our site here. So the first thing I'm going to do in the back is I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in the proper layer, which is going to be this one right here for A drive. Again, we're just using one layer for all of what we call our hardscapes here. I'm going to make sure my Z coordinate is on in here, and I'm going to press F6 to make sure that our dynamic UCS is off. So make sure down here in the command bar that you see at the bottom, the UCS is off so that you don't accidentally snap to a point that you don't really want to snap to. Now I could use polylines or I can use lines. I'm going to go ahead and start my design with just some line work right now, and I'm going to go ahead and say I want to offset my pool deck to the right about 20 feet. Actually, I'm going to pull it over maybe another 10 feet that way, and I'm going to go ahead and offset it in the other direction. This time I'm only going to go 20 feet in this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line from this point and go ahead to I'm going to go straight down here. Actually, no, I'm going to keep going this way. And let's go ahead and offset this more, maybe 10 feet to the right and 10 feet to the left in here. And then I can go ahead and draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to pull this over to this point. I'm going to offset one of these two lines that I did, and I'm going to offset it 20 feet toward the back. Now that might get us way too close to the back property line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it there for now, and I'm going to take a close look at it. There may be some restrictions in terms of how close the pool deck can be to a property line, but as of now, let's just leave it. And it still leaves a small area in here for landscaping if we wanted to do that. So let's go ahead and let's fillet these items right here. fillet that right there. And I'm going to go ahead and fillet these two lines. And now, even though this is overlapping in here, that's something that we can take care of later. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw this line straight across because I am in the process of creating that closed polyline that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that middle line that we had just as a guideline. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check and see at its closest point how much distance I have here to my property line. It says only 1'9". I want to leave enough to be able to do some landscaping there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stretch this out. And I'm going to bring that in about, let's say, another foot. So that leaves me about 2'9". I could do it a little bit more. Let's see what our full distance is from here to here. All right, that leaves us 23 feet. Let's go ahead and just pull it in one more, about 6 more inches, which gives us at least over 3 feet to work for some landscaping hedges in the back for privacy. Now typically you will not, unless you're doing a screen enclosure, and then it becomes another problem in terms of what you can plant in there. But what you want to leave is enough landscaping to give you maybe some privacy if you don't have a privacy wall back out into there. You don't want to do any large deciduous trees back out in here because they're going to be shedding their leaves, and that would probably fall into the pool itself and require a lot more cleaning. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to isolate the layer we were working on. Now remember, everything that we've been drawing for this back out in here has been on our drawing plane. So if you recall, what we did is all of our other hardscapes we drew on our drawing plane and then extruded up 2 inches. So what we want to do is we want to create a closed polyline of that. So I'm going to go to the P-edit command. I'm going to select one of the lines. It's asking me, do you want to turn it into one? I'm going to hit enter to choose yes, and then I'm going to go to join, and I'm going to select all the lines that I want to include in my polyline. So now I can click right into there. Now this right in here is what I was trying to avoid. If we had done this purely with 2D line work, I would probably, it could have been solved easily. I could have just pulled this back to this point. But I'm going to do this as a combination for that. So once again, since this is a new session, I lost my default solids tab. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to turn that back on, go to solids, go to extrude, select that, hit enter, and pull up the 2 inches to match the other one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just to give you another example of how we can, using the union command, combine these two solids. So right up in here, you can see there's a union command. I'm going to select both items that I want. And what should happen is these lines right here should disappear. And there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead, go back to my home tab. I'm going to unisolate and go back to top view. And that looks like what we want it to look like right now. Now I can begin to draw as 2D line work my pool. I'm going to be doing that later on in this video. Of course, I'm going to have to create specific layers for that so they can be turned on and off as we need to show them on specific sheets. Now let's go ahead and let's go to the front. And let's decide to, I'm not going to extend the sidewalk because I doubt very much if our point of view is going to vary much from about here or across this way, or we may want to get just a little bit further away. So what I want to do is make this look, at least the road, a little bit more like what our site plan indicates. So for that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make the road, A-road, my current layer. I'm going to find the center of all of these arcs right in here, which should be down in here. And I'm going to go ahead and lay it out right to that point. And I'm going to do the same thing that we did in the back for the pool area. And I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to go to solids, extrude, and go up 2, go back to union, and I'm going to unite this and this. And that's what we've got at that point. So So let's go back to the top view. And what I need to do is I need to add another one in here, or use one of the commands that's available to us with AutoCAD Architecture. You can actually do a fillet command at that point. Alright, so once we have unioned the two solids, let's go ahead and zoom in. We're going to use the fillet command. Now, you can fillet certain edges of 3D solids, so that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to type in fillet, and it's going to select the first object. So let's go ahead and let's zoom in. I'm going to go ahead, I think I could select the whole thing right in here, but I want to be careful. I want to select the edge I want to fillet, which is that one in there. So it says fillet, enter radius. I'm going to go ahead and type in 15 feet for that radius. And it says select an edge or chain loop radius. I'm going to go ahead and select it. And it says edge has already been picked. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter. And there we have it. We have a nice radius that completed the look that I was looking for at that point. We can leave this as a two-dimensional center line for now, and I think that looks much better. Let's go ahead and let's go back to conceptual. I think that looks better, and it may give us a few more options in terms of what we want to do with our rendering and our viewpoint and camera location. Let's go back to 2D wireframe, and I want to start completing on the site plan some of the other issues I wanted to do. So as of right now, if we take a look at this, now we did bring in a number of layers from the Marion, and if you take a look at it in here, we do have an A pool and an A pool deck layer. Now we're not using the A pool deck layer or the hatch at this point, and if we want to do that, we would probably have to modify a break point between this walkway here and the pool deck area. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, for simplification, we're going to go ahead and use the same hatch pattern all the way through the pool and all the way through the walkway and the driveway. So we're going to leave that part as an A drive layer. Now I am going to go ahead and select A pool for my current layer, and I'm going to do pretty much the same thing that we did before. I'm going to go ahead and draw just a guideline in here, and I'm going to do a pool that's going to be about 30 feet long. I'm going to leave at least, let's leave to start 5 feet here for the pool, and I'm going to give myself a 15-foot pool. Now that might bring it a little bit too close to the outside edge, but let's go ahead and do that. Yep, that puts us way beyond what we wanted to do. So let's go ahead and move this down 1 foot each. And I'm going to go with a 13-foot wide pool. I'm going to do 13 feet from here. And that still doesn't give me enough area to be able to run around the pool. So I've got that already at 4 feet. Just going to go ahead and pull that about a foot in. Well, let's try this again. I have a 13-foot pool. I'm going to go ahead and offset that 12 feet. And that's going to be our pool that we're going to be using. I probably want at least 3 feet right in here to work with, and right now I'm set at 2'6". So I'm just going to go ahead and move everything down about 6 inches. And for now, I'm just going to do a very simple rectangular pool. You notice I'm still set with my fillet for the radius, so I have to use right-click, repeat fillet. Down here on the command bar, I'm going to go to radius, set it back to 0, and go ahead and start filleting the items that I want. Let's fillet this here too. And I'm going to get rid of that line in here, and then I'm going to add just a little bit more detail. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one too. I'm going to go ahead and just do a cut in here. I might do, let's see if I want to do a hot tub or something on this location, or just leave this over on this side more for a lounging area, etc. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this corner right in here of the pool, and maybe what we can do then is cut the corner of the deck at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a radius in here, and I'm going to draw it, let's go ahead and let's do about a 6-foot radius there for the pool. I'm going to trim it, the pool deck area in here, like that. And I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I can go ahead and do this. Actually, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to start with the pool deck, and then I'm going to cut from the pool. So let's go ahead and draw from here. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one at 6 feet. And then I'm going to offset this 3 feet. Like that for my pool deck area. I'm going to go ahead and offset it maybe another foot. And I think that looks a little bit better. It gives me a little bit more room to go around. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim. Now this right in here is a 3D solid. So what do I do to fix that? Now I shouldn't have any problems trimming away my pool deck area like that. But this presents a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and 3D orbit this. And I'm going to make this very simple. I'm just going to go to Solids, Extrude. I'm going to use the Subtract command. Now I can bring this up as high as I want to. That really doesn't matter. The only thing I have to be aware of is that when you do a Subtract command or you do a Union command, you have to worry about what layer it's going to be on if these two are on different layers. So let's see what happens. So if I go back to my Solids tab and I go, rather than this Union, I can go to Subtract. I'm going to select what I want to subtract from, and then I'm going to subtract this one, hit Enter, and there we go, I've got my cut. Let's go back ahead and let's get back onto the top view. And let's see what we've got happening there. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that right now. There may be some things that I want to modify and add to the pool, but a lot of that can be done with additional drawings where you would be able to detail and dimension a lot of the things having to do with the pool and the pool deck area and hardscapes. In fact, that's a very common way of presenting, where you would have an overall site plan at a specific scale, which may be 1/8 of an inch, and then you can come in later on and you have drawings that you will begin to do what we call enlarged plans, so that you can take a look at a little bit more detail and dimensions on what you want to do. Alright, so that's pretty good. We've taken care of in the front. We've modified things a little bit, and a lot of this has been a combination, both 3D modeling, such as our deck areas, and 2D dimensioning right now, or 2D drawing for the pool deck area. Very simplified way of doing this. And it's a combination based on, as I mentioned previously, maybe budget and maybe time constraints. So let's see what our next move is going to be. We know that we have located here in the back, we have our window wells. Now, where is the best place to go ahead and start placing your window wells? Now, before I even get to that, you know that we're going to have a lot more work to do on this site plan. We have to include items such as air conditioning or heater pads. We're going to do a lot of landscaping on the plan. And of course, once we get to the sheet, we're going to be doing layer manipulation in terms of what layers are turned on and off on the sheet and what their line quality is going to be based on the XREF that we bring in. So let's go ahead, and rather than drawing our window wells right here, let's go to where they're actually going to be located if we were to 3D model them, and or if we were to draw them initially. So the plan shows window wells for each one of these windows here, including this one back out in here. So there's a couple things you could do. You could very easily, let's make sure, I don't think we have window wells drawn before, so we're going to have to create a layer for it. So let's go ahead and create a layer. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new layer. That's going to be A dash, I'm going to use the glazing layer, and I'm going to use wells. well, okay, a glazing well. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the color on that. Let's go ahead and let's just get kind of a unique layer that we haven't used before. Let's use that purplish 163. Continuous line type is fine, but rather than the default, because I don't want this showing up too bright, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as a very, very thin layer as of right now. So I'm going to go ahead with a 0.05, and I'm going to make it our current layer. So let's go ahead and close our Layer Properties Manager, and let's see a couple of ways that we could do this. So the first way is you could actually be drawing them yourself. So the way that I would have done that is, of course, double check your Z coordinates that's on. I would go ahead and draw to the edge in here. Now we want this to not start right at the edge of the frame. We would want this to be both coming further away from the wall and further away from the edge in case we want to use some trim work or in case we need to finish some of the other stuff. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to offset this 4 inches in each direction, and that's going to represent the inside of the window well, and then I'm going to offset that 2 inches, and that's going to represent the thickness of the window well. I'm going to go ahead and move this over to the left, and I'm going to move it about 12 inches to the left, and I'm going to find the center here, and I'm going to draw a trim line right in here to where I can trim my window well. So let's go ahead and trim my circles there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a polyline here, and I'm going to start at that edge, go perpendicular to the wall, find this point in here, and then come back and close it. Now I can do the same thing. I could draw it on the other side, or I can find my center and use it as a mirror and go back to the other side. Now I'm going to erase that line. Let's go ahead and do a 3D orbit right in here. And what I can do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and polyline edit it, p-edit, and I'm going to join an existing polyline that we drew there, and I'm going to join all of our elements right there. So I can go ahead and I can now extrude this. Now I don't know where to place it or where to extrude it yet. So I only need to do that if I want to be able to do this as a 3D object. So as of right now, I'm pretty content leaving it the way that it is as a 2D object. Again, if you recall from my model, we go back to that, I am planning to go ahead and do our perspective view from the right side of the house where you would not even see those window wells. So let's go ahead and leave this basement the way that it is, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to do it from center. Find my center point here, do one more, and then I'm going to do one more here, but I need to rotate that one. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. And we have our window wells located. Now let's go back, and if you notice, if we go back to our site, we want them to show here, but they were drawn on a basement level that does not show here on the site. Now it is a two-dimensional drawing, so we could bring in the XREF here temporarily to take a look at it, or in some cases what we end up doing is we'll go to the basement and we'll copy clipboard these and bring them into the site construct. I don't like that method, and mainly because if we make a change to the design of the window well, we would then have to modify it and bring it again and do some extra work to bring it in. I think the easiest way is to understand the principle of draw it once and then be able to manipulate either layers or XREFs or X-clips, etc., to only show the parts that you want to show. And I will show that in a later video once we create our final sheet and we bring in all the XREFs together to show what we want to do. Now, we could have done another option, which was to actually go to a manufacturer or a website that provides the actual window wells. Because remember, once we bring this into our construction document, we're going to give a note here that's going to specify who the manufacturer and what the size of the window well is. So if we go to our Google or Explorer or whatever, we can actually go ahead, and what I can do is let's go ahead and let's go back to another search that I had done here, which I typed in egress window wells AutoCAD details. So when I scroll down through here, this is a fantastic way of taking a look at what a window well is and how the CAD details and manufacturers can save you a lot of time in drawing and drawing it more accurately rather than a generic window well like what we did. So I can go down here, and I went to this website right here, Wellcraft CAD BIM and Specs CAD details. So if I click on that, okay, and what it does, it brings me to a site that's called CAD details. Excellent for CAD drawings that you're looking for, and even for BIM models that you may be looking for. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go back to this one because that one went directly from the window wells. I could have typed that in here right now and gone to quick search. But take a look at all the options that we have in here. And if you click on any one of these products, you can begin to see what it's supposed to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one right here. And what it does, it gives me a little bit more information, and then it gives me the specifications on the window well. And right here on the right hand side, you can see all the different drawing or types of CAD details that they have. They have it in PDF, in DWF, DWG, etc. And they also have a 3D Revit SketchUp model. So let's go ahead and let's take a look. This is the CAD detail portion right in here. Let's look at what they have as far as the 3D. And we can actually take a look at in that website. We can, once this finishes up with the rendering of it, we can sort of take a look at what they've got available there. So we can take a look at it. That top really should be closed. Sometimes what they'll have is they'll have a screen on the top. So let's go ahead and go back to CAD details. So the best case scenario on this is to be able to download all. So I'm going to go ahead and download all. And usually what you do is wait a little while, and then if you take a look at down on the bottom left where your downloads are, let's go ahead and open that up. So we could look for it in a folder, and we can move it to the project folder if we want to, but I'm going to go ahead and just open that up, close out that window, and right here you can see all the different models that they have for it. I'm going to go ahead and open up the DWG drawing for it. And what I can do at this point is I can then take a look, and it's got a pretty nice level of details for this specific model. Now this one says it's 56 inches wide by 78 inches. That should be sufficient for the size window that we have. This one actually only shows a 48-inch wide window that we have, so this should be fine. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this portion in here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to clipboard, and I'm going to copy. I'm going to go back to my basement level in here. And what I'm going to do is replace one of these with this pre-drawn CAD detail. So I'm going to paste it right in here. I'm going to get rid of any information that I do not need. And I'm going to make sure, I'm going to see if I can change all of that to its current layer that I have, which is a glaze well. Right in there, which I did. And just for the sake of having something that I can use as a guideline. I'm going to close it off right here. Now, this may be a little bit too much information for what we need. So we may only need the top part of it, or if we wanted to do it and we made these layers thin enough, we can use that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make things a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and copy it again, hit enter, and this time I'm going to go ahead and clipboard it, but I'm going to paste it as a block. So make sure you're in the A-glaze well layer. I'm going to clipboard, paste this block, and there it is right there. So I can now not worry about all the individual lines I have in there, and I can go ahead and rotate my product and rotate it to that point. So let's see what happened in here, because it doesn't look like it's big enough to fit in there. So I'm going to go ahead and place that right into there, and you can tell that it's a little bit undersized. Now let's go ahead and let's do a distance measurement from here to here. And so what happened was, when we brought this drawing in, it brought it in not the correct scale. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and scale this guy up to what the proper size is. For that, we can go back to our window well size, and let's zoom in right in here, and it's telling us that it's 56 inches wide at the nearest point along the walls. So let's go back to AutoCAD. Let's find our basement right here, and I'm going to draw a line from here down 56 inches or up. Let me go ahead and move this to where I wanted it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this object so that this point is down here. So I'm going to use the scale command, highlight my block, use that as my base point, and then I'm going to go down to reference. My reference size is the existing size, and my new size is going to be down to here. So there we have it. We have a accurate window well that's actually a manufacturer window well. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete these and replace them with the window well that we have here. I'm going to go ahead and delete the line that we have right there, and I'm going to move these from there to perpendicular first, and then I'm going to move this guy to my midpoint and then move it back. I think I could have been a little bit more efficient than that, but that worked pretty well. Alright, so let's go ahead and copy these to the other 3 locations. Go from center or midpoint, midpoint, midpoint. I'm going to go ahead and go to midpoint here and rotate it once again. So now you saw 2 methods on how we can either bring in material or we can create them ourselves. Now, if you feel that this is too much line work going on in there and we want to edit it, we always have that ability to edit our block. And one of the ways to do that is if, for example, I don't want to see these 2 levels down in here, this is the beauty of having done a block. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. I'm going to right click, because this may be too much line work for what we want to do, especially maybe this double line right up in here. But I'm going to go ahead and leave, I'm going to remove this line right here, and I'm going to remove the last line and a couple of other things in there. So let's take a look at how this looks. So I'm going to highlight it, right click, I'm going to go to block editor or edit block in place. That's the block. We didn't give it a specific name, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight it, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to continue coming around. Continue back out in here. And let's go ahead and let's remove this one. bit better. Let's go ahead and isolate it and make sure that we're getting the closure that we want in here. Now we don't need that extending out, so I'm going to trim that out. And repeat trim. Okay, let's see what's going on in here. If that doesn't work, we can always do a fillet, or we can try to grab it by one of the grips and move it back down to there. So once we finish that, let's go ahead and right click, and we can close our ref edit session, and we're going to save the reference edits. Okay, all reference edits will be saved, and now if you take a look at each one of those that we did, they have all been changed. I'm going to go ahead and unfreeze the layer, or isolate the layer, and save that drawing. Alright, so this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and leave that the way it is for now. And let's go to our next level, which is going to be our main level. Alright, so what we want to do in the main level is, I think just one or two of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to make some corrections on a couple of items. Some of these may not be necessary, but when it comes time to rendering, it may end up presenting a little bit of a problem. And for that, we're going to take a look at what we've got happening in here in terms of our fascia board and our gutter. So we're going to create 2 layers for each one of those, and then what we're going to do is we're going to sweep it around to where we want to sweep it for now. So in addition to that, I think we may have to make some modifications to this brick wall and to our masonry wall down in the basement. So for now, let's focus on our work regarding our fascia board and our gutter. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to isolate my roof slab layer. And what I want in this case is I want a fascia board to wrap around all the way from here to this edge right in there. And then what we can do after that point, we can go ahead and add the gutter. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead, and if we take a look at our layers, we may have had something which was a roof fascia, and if we don't, we'll have to add that one. So let's take a look and see if there are any specialized layers that we want, that we brought in from the Marion. It doesn't look like we have one, so we're probably going to go ahead and include it in a either trim layer, or we're going to include it in a roof dash, and we're going to include fascia at that point. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to Layer Properties Manager. I'm going to go ahead and I don't want it to be a thick line, so I'm going to go to a roof right in here, and any one of those we can then modify it. I'm going to go ahead and create a layer right under that, and I'm going to create a dash roof and FSC A for fascia. I'm going to change the color to white, and I'm going to make it a relatively thin line weight. Notice our A roof was at 0.50. I'm going to change this one to 0.05, and I'm going to turn it back on. Alright, so now when we draw, it's not going to give us a warning that you do not have a current layer. So let's go ahead and do a roof fascia in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a profile flat on the ground, and then I'm going to rotate it 3D. That's another command that you're going to learn. I could also change the UCS and either go from the left or the right hand side to draw it, but I want to show you how to do a 3D rotate. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a closed polyline that's going to be representing a compound fascia. It's going to have 2 breaks to it. So I'm first going to go 2 inches out. I'm going to go about 8 inches down, I go 1 inch over to the left. I'm going to go up about, let's go ahead and let's go up 4 inches. Let's go up 2 inches. Let me go ahead and start that over. I've got my closed polyline. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to start at this point. This time I'm going to go down the 8, and I'm going to go ahead and just go over. Let's go ahead and let's just do it 1. I'm going to go up 2. Let's escape. Let's go ahead and draw that again. I'm going to go ahead and go up a total of 5. Go over the 1 again. Actually, this time I'm going to go over 0.5, and then go up this way. Let's measure that distance here from here to here. Okay, so let's start this over. Polyline, I'm going to go to the left 0.5 and go up to match that point and close that. Now, because this is very thick at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring that in just a little bit. I'm going to use the stretch crossing command, and actually I'm going to leave it the way it is. I think that works out pretty good. So what is the next thing that I want to do? Let's go ahead and switch to isometric view. And what I want to do is I want to rotate this in 3D. That means I want to rotate it vertically from this point. So I start with typing rotate. And if you look at my options, one of the options here is rotate 3D. I'm going to go ahead and highlight what I've done in here. I'm going to select the base point, and depending on the direction that I'm going, either left to right, or either right to left or left to right, is going to determine if I want to rotate it 90 degrees, whether it goes positive up or positive down. Usually left to right or front to back is going to give you a positive rotation that's going to go up. So I'm going to select that as my axis, and I'm going to type in 90, and as you can see, that rotated it straight up. Now at this point I'm going to go ahead and move it, and I'm going to move it. Notice it's not letting me grip this because our drawing plane is down here. So this is one of those other rare occasions where I am going to turn off my locking of the Z value, and then I'm going to go ahead and move this, and I'm going to move it up to this corner. And the next thing I need to do is to create a path that's going to go around this way, and then I can either extrude or I can sweep. So let's go ahead. Now in actuality, if I had used the sweep command, that might work without having to rotate 3D, but I have grown accustomed to doing the rotate 3D. So I'm going to draw a polyline. It needs to be a polyline to create our path, and I'm going to bring the path all the way around this way, bring it to the back, and bring it to here. Now before I sweep or extrude this, I want to duplicate this and bring this entire drawing. Now notice right now it's not combined as a polyline. That's going to be a problem. So I first need to once again do a join command. I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm going to do join. I'm going to select that, and hit enter. Now let's make sure it's all one polyline. That's exactly what I want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy clipboard this, and I'm going to bring it into my upper because I want to reuse this for my upper roof. So clipboard, copy, enter. Let's go ahead and redo that because I'm going to clipboard copy with base point. My base point is going to be this back corner. And I'm going to select the object, hit enter. I'm going to go to my upper drawing for now, and I am going to go ahead and 3D orbit this, and since I'm not going to do a rendering in the back, I'm going to clipboard and paste, and I'm going to paste that somewhere here in the back, right at the top of the fascia board also. So now notice it's not oriented correctly, So for this, all I need to do, if you look at it from the top, you can see it right there, and I need to rotate this way. So I'm going to use the simple rotate command. Make sure the Z is back on, and I'm going to select right at the end point here and rotate it 90 degrees this way. So now if we look at it from that point, you can tell that it's properly rotated and it's pointing straight out. I'm going to save this so that we don't lose it. And let's go take a look at our main drawing, and let's see what happens when we either sweep or extrude. I'm going to go to solids. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click extrude. I'm going to select the item I want to extrude. I'm going to hit enter. And rather than giving it a distance this way, I'm going to go down to my command bar, and notice one of the options is path. I'm going to go ahead and click on path, select there, and what I've done is I have extruded my entire fascia all the way around to there. So that works excellent. And what we can do at this point is either go to our upper level or go ahead and modify it to our, let me go ahead and select our upper level. I'm going to 3D orbit this around a little bit. I'm going to isolate those two layers. Again, it declutters your drawing. And I'm going to create another path starting here and wrapping it all around. Do not ever bring in a profile and start at a corner like this. It makes no sense at all. And the computer gets confused on exactly what they're able to do. Okay, I'm going to select polyline. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to make this my current layer, a roof fascia. I'm going to start with polyline, start at this point. Once again, it's not letting me clip, so I need to take off temporarily my Z coordinate and click from that point to the top here, top there. Now in the past you really couldn't bring it to this point. What you don't want to do is have these become one closed polyline, because it gets confused also. But I think in the current iterations of AutoCAD it seems to work pretty well. So we've got our path located all the way around. We can now go to solids and we can extrude if we wanted to. There's also some other options that we have in terms of sweep, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and use the extrude. Select what I want to extrude here, hit enter, and once again I'm going to go down to the path. I'm going to select the path, and it clearly makes it go all the way around. I'm going to save that drawing, go back to top view, and I'm going to unisolate all the layers, save that, make sure in our main that we have unisolated all the layers, which we did not. Let's go ahead and unisolate. Let's go back to the top view. Let's go ahead and look at our, let's save the drawing, and now let's look at our model and see how that has changed. So if you take a look at your fascia, or the edge of your roof right now, it's relatively plain. The minute we reload our modified XREFs, let's see if something happens. And if you take a look at it, it's got a lot more detail happening right now. Now this may not be exactly how it would be constructed, but in terms of our elevation and in terms of our modeling for the model, it adds another level of detail that we were looking for. So let's go ahead and let's do the same thing with the gutter. I think what we're going to want to do in here is we're going to create the gutter, and then what we're going to do is try to shell it, so that what we can do is we can actually make sure that the ends of our gutter are whole. In other words, that they are not open on the end. So let's go back to top view. We didn't need to do that on there, but let's go ahead and let's go to our main level. And we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we did before. So what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a polyline. And I know I'm going to be rotating it, but this is a good start for me to do it. I'm going to go ahead and come out 4 inches. Actually, let's just come out 3 inches. Let's come out 3. Let's just come out 1 inch down. Let's come out 0.5 in this direction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come down about another 2 inches down. I'm going to come across. And finish up right there and close up. So what I have now is a closed polyline, but what I want to do is I want to fillet this because I want this to have a curved edge, and I also may want to bring this in just a tiny bit. A couple modifications so we can make this look a little bit more like what it should. We can also use the stretch in here and bring this in maybe a 1/4 inch in this direction. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's fillet this. I type in fillet. Let's try that again. Whoops. Fillet. I'm going to go radius, and I'm going to put a 1 inch radius in here. Let's see if we can fillet this. There we go. And that's beginning to look a little bit like what we want to. I'm going to go ahead and undo that and add a little bit more to that radius. So let's go back and recent input. We're going to go back to fillet. This time go to radius, and let's change that to 2. And let's see what that looks like. I think that looks a little bit better in terms of what the gutter might look. Now this is an oversimplified gutter. So it's something that we really don't need to worry about for the level of detail that we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead, and in order to make sure that our edges are going to be solid, we are going to go ahead, and if you notice this was drawn down at the bottom, I'm going to rotate 3D using the same command. Rotate 3D, select it. Just going to select the end point here. Again, go to front to back or left to right, type in 90, and let's go ahead and move this to where we want to do it. Once again, luckily we still have the Z off. I should have turned it back on, but let's go ahead and bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and bring it right to the end of here. And I might move this down maybe a 1/2 inch. So we add another level of detail to that, and that looks pretty good. And what I need to do at this point is I need to duplicate what we were doing in terms of our path. So what I'm going to do at this case, I'm going to go ahead and start from this corner right here and create a polyline exactly where we were before. I'm going to go ahead and hide my fascia board at this point. Just hide the object, not the layer, because this is in the same layer. Actually, we need to create a new layer for this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a polyline in here and follow the same procedure that I did to extrude the fascia board. And I'm going to go to this edge right here. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's take this guy and see what happens when we extrude it. So let's go to solids. Now once again I want to save this, so I need to clipboard, copy with base point. That's going to be our base point. I'm going to select it, hit enter. I'm going to go back to the upper. I'm going to go back to my isolate in the back. And I'm going to go ahead and isolate my fascia board in the back. What I want to make sure is I select the right edge. So I'm going to clipboard, paste, and once again I still have this off. I should have turned it back on, but this is actually going to help me. and I just need to select any point along the proper edge. So if I'm able to find the midpoint, that would be great. So let's zoom in here. The midpoint would be right there. And the last thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and rotate this. I'm going to rotate it from here along there, and we're good to go. Again, that was a simple rotate command, not a 3D rotate. I'm going to go back to top view. I'm going to unisolate end object isolation. I'm going to save this. Let's save that. And let's go back to our main and see what we can do with our extrusion here. So we've copied this up to our upper level, which is going to help us quite a bit. Let's go to solids, extrude, select what we want to extrude, and then select the path. So we need to go here to path, and it looks like it extruded beautifully all the way around. So let's go ahead and isolate this now. And what we're going to try to do is see if we have a command that's called shell, and we're going to see if that's going to work for us. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and isolate the object. So typically, if you really wanted to accurately model this, you would want to hollow this out, make sure that the ends are solid, and then be able to modify the drawing accordingly. In our case, because we're never going to do an upward view of this, we're not going to see the inside of this gutter, we could probably leave it the way it is and it would suffice for our renderings. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the Home tab. I'm going to unisolate the layer. Let's go ahead, right click, End Object Isolation of the object. I'm going to go ahead and go back to top view, and I'm going to save it the way it is, and we'll save that for another assignment in terms of being able to hollow that out, because we're really not going to be able to see this. Now, one of the things about where this stops right in here is we know that our second floor level goes to this point, and our roof ends at that point. So this is probably a good location to end our fascia board, but that again is one of the details that we're going to see later on. Let's go back up to the upper level, and let's do the same thing in here. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the fascia board for now. And I use these tools all the time. And what I want to be able to do is select the point where this is going to be able to be extruded in the right direction. So let's go ahead and let's create a polyline. I'm going to go up to the top view, and I'm going to start by drawing it right at this location. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to turn this back on because I want to make sure that when I'm drawing these lines that I am drawing them at the correct elevation. If I have this on, I then just need to move the whole thing up in one shot. But let's take a look at what happens if I leave this on and I make sure that every time that I draw this, that I set up a snap point for it. So let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and use our polyline. I want this to line up there. Bring it to the end point here and take a look at what's happening. I'm obviously not in the correct layer. I'm going to bring this over to here. I'm going to select it, and immediately I'm going to change it to the right layer. So let's go ahead and let's go to roof fascia for now, which we're going to have to change later on. So let's go ahead and go back to our view there, and let's see what we got. So if you notice, this ended up drawing this down at the bottom anyways. So all we need to do is now move it. Let's move it from this point, and let's bring it up to that point. I'm going to go ahead and lock that, and let's see if this extrudes. Go back to the solids, extrude, select my object, and select my path once again, and select right here, and it looks like it went ahead and extruded it. But notice what it did. Because I only changed the object and I did not make this my current layer, it immediately changed whatever I extruded to the current layer. So let's go ahead and let's change this to a roof fascia. And we got it as white right now. And I'm going to go ahead and go to top view. I'm going to save, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to end any object isolations such as the fascia that we had before. And we're going to take a look closely at some of the conditions in here and see what happened, because when you really take a look at this, we've got some conditions that are not correct. So we may have to do a little bit of repair in here. Let's go ahead and let's go to a conceptual view and see what's going on. So the back extruded okay, but the rest of it did not extrude correctly, and that had to do with the fact that our path was not directly aligned with one of the objects. So what we need to do is we need to sort of undo and see how we can solve that problem. Now, we didn't have that problem in the ground floor or in the main level, or did we? Let's take a look at our main level and see what happened with our fascia board. I'm going to go ahead and change this to conceptual so we can see it. And the exact same thing happened here. So we need to make some corrections in how we are going to be able to extrude this properly so that it does wrap all the way around the way we want it to do it. So let's go ahead and let's go back to top view, and we're going to start with the upper level and try to fix it there. Go back to upper level, go back to our top view, and I think part of the problem was that this element is not tied into back here. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we need to somehow, and I don't think it's tied in vertically either, so let's see what we've got. I can change to my left view, and as you can tell, well, it is tied in vertically, so that's a good sign. Let's go back to the top view and let's see if we can somehow fix this. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this, and I'm going to try to unite this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this guy and pull it back to the top of our element right there. So we're going to try to hit perpendicular and see if that works for us. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a polyline. Okay, let's see what's the best way to do this. Alright, so let's try to be a little bit creative here in terms of how we can do this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to top view. I'm going to change my layers to a roof fascia so that I don't have to deal with that red color anymore. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the path that we laid out previously, and I'm going to offset it so that it lines up perfectly with that. Okay, I'm going to leave this on. And I'm going to offset. And I'm going to use through, and then I'm going to select the object I want to offset, and I want to do it through this point. So actually what I've done right now is I've created an offset mark for this guy. Granted, it is not in the right location, but let's see if that works. So make sure that this is the path you choose, not the inside one. I'm going to go ahead and delete the inside one so we don't get tempted. Solids, extrude, select the object, and once again I'm going to go path. I'm going to select the path here. Let's go to top view and see if that solved our problem. Still not a solution to the problem that we want. Again, this point is not correct. Okay, this actually needed to extrude a little bit more. So let's go ahead and undo back to where we were. Now let's see why that did not work. Let's go ahead and check our offsets. That should have worked pretty well. Alright, so let's try this one more time using a slightly different technique. I'm going to go back to my ISO in the back corner, and I'm going to move my path from where I started it, which is the midpoint. And now, since it lines up with that, I'm going to try to move it to the top of that block. So I'm going to use the move command. Let's go ahead and get this minimized. Select my path, enter. I'm going to try to find the midpoint or the end, which should be one and the same in this case. I'm going to move it straight up, and I'm going to line it up with the top right in here. Now once again, it's not letting me, so I'm going to turn off my Z again and bring this up to this point right there. Let's give this another shot. So let's go ahead, solids. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this again. Copy, because I may need it for my main level since I already extruded that. So let's go ahead and go to solids, extrude, hit enter, and follow my path. Let's go to top view. Keep our fingers crossed that it worked this time, and voila. So there is definitely a relationship between the edge of what you want to extrude and where the path would be. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I am going to then do the same thing to the main level. We're going to fix that up. There are some other ways that we could fix this, but they may be a little bit more cumbersome. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what we had, and I'm going to paste. To get out of conceptual, I'm going to go to 2D wireframe. Go ahead, clipboard, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that right there. I'm going to rotate it in the right direction, and I am going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do this time, I'm actually going to use the edge of our fascia board, which was done correctly, and use that as where my path is going to lay. So I'm going to isolate those objects. I'm going to go ahead and move my object to where I intended it to be also, and this is something we could have done also with the other one. I'm going to go to layer 0, or any one of the layers that we've created, and I'm going to create my polyline from that point, and I'm going to select it right at the edge of the piece. I want to make sure I'm selecting the right corners in here. Outside corner. And I'm going to finish it up right here. Go ahead and hide this guy right now. So I'm left with my path right here. This should work. And let's go ahead, go to solids, extrude, select our object, hit enter, go down to path, select the path, hit enter, and let's see what we got. I'm going to isolate, end object isolation for all the objects. Let's go back to our top view. Going to save that, and I am going to now make sure that the upper was saved also, and I want to see how it's affected my model. We're going to go to model, reload modified XREFs. I'm going to go ahead and 3D orbit and see what we've got going in here. I'm going to go ahead and switch this from, I had it in perspective, I'm going to switch it to parallel. And as you can tell, we have a much more highly detailed fascia condition going around, including the conditions for our fascia and our gutter. Now, we haven't created any of the gutters yet, so that's what we're going to be doing next. As I mentioned before, a lot of our detailing that we're going to do it as two-dimensional detailing on our elevations. What I do want to do is I want to go back to my upper level, and I want to create some detailing for our chimney. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and isolate the chimney. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it on a roof fascia. We're going to have to be doing some corrections in some of these layers, which is going to be extremely important to do. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a rectangle around here. And I'm going to offset it 1 inch. And I'm going to offset that one 1 inch. And I'm going to delete the first one. So the first thing I want to do, and this is just going to be some very, very quick, I want to create a trim work around the top. The base one, I want it to be roughly about 6 inches or 8 inches deep, and then the second one's going to be 4 inches. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go to solids, I'm going to extrude the inside one, and I'm going to go ahead and move that up. I said 8 inches, let's go ahead and do that. And then this one I wanted to go ahead and I want to extrude also. Let's go back to the upper. And I want to extrude this one. And I want to extrude this one 4 inches, but I want to move it up 4 inches. Now, once again, these are solids. I don't really need to hollow them because we're not going to be seeing that. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my inside edge of that one is going to line up with this guy right in here. So the easiest way for me to do that, and this is another technique, is to actually change your view, not using the view cube, but using one of these view options in here. This actually changes your UCS. I'm going to use view left, and I want to bring all this up to that point. So I'm going to make sure this is on, and I'm going to move this and the other one with it, and I'm just going to go from the top and go to perpendicular. Now, if everything is correct, that should have stayed right with what we want. Notice where my grid is now. It's in an awkward position because I changed my UCS. So now I need to go back to my original UCS. I need to unisolate all my other objects. I need to save it. Let's go back to our model and let's see what that looks like. We made a change, so hopefully we'll be seeing some additions to the top there, and there they are. So we're adding quite a bit of detail here to our model. It's going to make it look a lot better. We're not going to do it all in 3D model at first, but eventually when we're going to do our renderings, we are going to do that. I'm going to show you how this has been affected. Okay, I think the last thing we want to do is we may be bringing in a chimney cap to the top. So let's do something. Let's go ahead and let's go back to our upper level. This will be the last thing we do on this video. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back to my CAD details right in here. And I'm going to type in chimney cap. And let's see what we've got. So here's a few of them. Let's look at Edco products. And let's see what we've got on there. Now it may not give us what we're looking for. Okay, that's just looking for steel roofing. That really doesn't help us out too much. Alright, so we're going to try to do a chimney cap right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the furthest point. I'm going to go ahead and isolate the objects. And what I need to do is I need to make sure to put my chimney cap on top of that. Now, I previously had created a block of a chimney cap. I may have to modify its dimensions a little bit to fit specifically the size of the chimney that we had got in here. So I've already added it to my clipboard. I will add it to Canvas where you guys can download it, and I'm going to go ahead and paste. It's already a block, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate it in the right direction. I'm going to rotate it this way. That looks a little bit nicer. And let's take a look and see what that looks like in 3D. Okay, actually I got to rotate it in the other direction. Let's go ahead and let's rotate it this way. And let's see how much we need to change that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move it from its midpoint right here. I'm going to make sure this is on. I can move it up later and place that right at that midpoint. And I want it to overlap maybe another inch in every direction this way. Now, of course, it's way too wide right now and it's not long enough. So how do we modify a specific block that you may have? If we go to the properties, you can take a look at your X and Y scale. In one case, we want to reduce this scale. So let's go ahead and change this to 0.9. And you notice how that begins to come in. I think we need to move it a little bit more. Let's change that to maybe 0.8. This is going to be a hit or miss, so we're going to have to be modifying this quite a bit. So let's go ahead and let's try 7.5 or 7. And I'm going to go ahead and move it from midpoint, and I need to line it up with its midpoint. Right to there. And it looks like I came in a little bit too much. Let's go ahead and change that back up to 8 or 7.5. Move it over. Okay. That looks like it's I think 0.8 is going to be just about right in that direction. Now you're going to notice something when you do make these changes. If you notice the thing that was a circle before, okay, that has now taken on a different look. And that's because we've stretched it out in not a the same direction on either way. So let's go ahead and move this just a little tiny bit more. This looks like this actually needs to be just a little bit less. So let's go ahead and change this to about 8. Let's say 5. So as you can see, this can be tedious and time consuming, so let's just have it go a little bit beyond the edge. We're going to create a different material for this. But I'm pretty happy with that right there. I think that'll work. Now we got to do it in the other direction. In this case, we got to increase it, so this is really going to change shape. But luckily, we're not going to be able to see it, and we may actually remove that portion of it. So let's go ahead and go back to here, and instead of going down, we're going to go up with this. Let's change that to 125. And that looks like that was a little bit too much. Let's undo that. And let's highlight it again. And let's change that to about 1.15. And let's highlight it. We want this to come down just a little bit this way. Actually, that's already in the location we want. I actually want to move this up. Right about to there, and let's look at see how it is on the top. Just a tiny bit more that we got to increase it. So let's do that 1.55. And that looks just about right. Okay, I think that'll do. Let's just change one slight 1.575. pretty happy with that one. I'm going to go now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and change this to my, just click the wrong drawing in there. No, I don't want to say changes to that drawing. I'm going to reload to this one also. We're going to turn layers off. Let's go back to our upper level where we were doing this, and let's switch to our front view, and let's go ahead and pull this up. Now I can have this overlap the bottom one a little bit like that so that it looks like the metal actually overhangs through that. Let's go ahead and go back to top view, and I'm going to isolate it. Isolate the object. Going to go to my isometric view, and really what I want to do is kind of get rid of this bottom portion of it. But let's see if we can do that. Now watch what's going to happen. I'm going to ask to edit block in place and do OK, and it says cannot ref edit a non-uniformly scaled block. Okay, so it's not letting me. Let's go ahead and highlight it again, and this time let's go to block editor, and here is where we can make some modifications. So what we can try to do in here is, let's see if we can actually edit this, edit block in place, but it's giving me the same block editor. Alright, so we're going to have to stay with what we've got. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to close the block editor. There were no changes that we made in this, so I'm just going to go ahead and save changes anyways. And there it is. Okay, so hopefully we had left it the way that it was. We're not going to be able to tell that from the view that we're doing. I'm going to unisolate all the objects, end object isolation, make sure that all my layers are correctly set up or turned on. I'm going to save this, and let's take a look at what we have in our model. So let's go ahead and reload our model, and there we go. Now if you think that this maybe has gotten a little bit too tall, then that's a design issue that we can face later on. So right now we've got an element like that for the fireplace, which is not unattractive, but it looks like it might be just a little bit too high. So let's go ahead and let's take care of that right now. I'm going to go back to the upper. This time I'm going to go to the right side view, and I am going to move all of these items down about, let's say, 1 foot. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this one, and I'm going to go back to solids. I'm going to go to one of these modifiers. I'm going to say move faces. I'm going to select the top face, hit enter, and mark that down as 6. Actually it's a foot, so I got to do the same thing. So I got to do move faces, click this one, and do the other 6, because I moved it down a full foot. Okay, so that looks good right in there. I'm going to go back to my top view. I'm going to save it, and let's take a look at our main. That looks pretty good. Let's take a look at our model. Okay, let's reload it, and that looks a little bit more reasonable. I'm going to save it, and in our next video we're going to continue doing some modifications to some of the detailing and the modeling, and then we're going to show you how this has affected the elevations and how it has given us a little bit more freedom in terms of our 3D modeling when it comes time to render this whole thing.